What is she?
And welcome in episode 40 here of the Grind on Sports. I'm Wayne Kaiser alongside Ben Metz, and we are about ready to open up a big regional can of Grind on Sports here. So Ben, how you doing? Looks like you're rocking the Red Rebels tonight.
You can't go wrong with the Red Rebels. You know, yo ho, yo ho, yo ho, buddy. And yeah, I'm doing good. I mean, we've had a lot of things have changed. Some for the better, some for the worst. In a week's time, mostly for the better. We're going to recap a lot of that during this broadcast tonight. Looking forward to it, brother.
You know, I talk about it all the time. If you ever want to just really put your mind to how quick things change, have a weekly podcast because you can either be really right for about 7 days or you can be really wrong for about 7 days. And usually we land somewhere in the middle. That's why there's two of us. There's not a lot of high highs and not a lot of low lows. So, but we'll start off the show a little bit of a recap, a little bit of look back. There'll be a couple pieces that we're going to speak on, but really the focus is about the opportunity to hang some more hardware, a team that did hang some hardware in Tennessee baseball. But a couple quick topics. First and foremost, again, we are fan-driven, so we don't know Coach Heupel personally, but do want to extend our condolences. The passing of his mother. I don't care who you are. Everybody's got a mama, and everybody knows what that void would create. Again, I'm blessed to still have my mama, and I'll be honest. You know, anytime I see somebody that loses their mom, it's just like a whoa. It's a big change, and so looking at pictures and things that it's been posted the last several days, looks like she was the leader in the clubhouse. She took care of a lot of different things to allow the dads and the brother and even Josh's sister to kind of flourish and have really successful lives. So big like I said, big prayers up for the Heupel family. Mother passed away 69 years old.
Yeah, shout out to the Heupel family. Wayne, as you know, I lost my dad this year, and first parent that I've lost. And it's just a hole that you have to manage in your life. They'll always be there, but just not in the form that you're used to. So I pray for him and wish him and his family the best. And he's a tough guy. Comes from a tough family from that I think it's the North Dakota area. Mm-hmm. So he'll make it through it, but we're thinking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the head guy at Tennessee, it's a big deal. And so, again, we're for you when you're winning, but we're also for you when you need us. So that's kind of where we're at. But other things on the docket, again, probably a little bit off the beaten path right now is Tennessee basketball, but they did sign a huge signee this past week, Chaz Lanier, the North Florida transfer. Huge get for Coach Rick Barnes. Ben, what a difference a couple months make. A couple months ago, the graduation of Dalton Connect, the exit of Vescovi, the exit of Triple J, the exit of Adu, all these different things that looked like what was a really special team was being dismantled. Now Coach Barnes got 5 starting spots. He's got about 8 options to put in it. So to me, the cupboard has been restocked, and now it's an off season to get them physically ready, to get them in the off season program, do what you need to do. But Lanier, I don't want to say it's a chip off the old block, but he's a guy who shot 40% plus from 3-point land in a very similar conference to where Dalton Connect came from.
Yeah, and 51% from the field, 19 points per game. A big guard, 6'4". He's going to complement that Zakai Ziegler up front, and three. He comes in with three other players out of this portal. Rick Barnes has done an exceptional job stocking that cupboard going into the 24-25 season.
Well, and to this point, I think we're pretty well done. I think we may add another piece here or there for depth purposes, but I think your big key piece is probably, like I said, your starting 5 and some bench players are in tow. It's just how he's going to stack them and who's going to get the nod to start each night. So that'll be fun to watch as the season progresses, but just really a key piece there. Rick Barnes, guy at work that we work with, we'll call him the crown man from this chair. But he's watched a lot of Tennessee basketball. He's watched a lot of Rick Barnes basketball, and he ventures to say that if Rick Barnes is going to win one, he may have it in the pocket right here.
Oh yeah, and when you look at the team that was left, you're talking about guys like Cade Phillips, Zakai Ziegler, Cameron Carr, J.P. Estrella, Jordan Gainey, all these names. There's going to be a lot of healthy competition going into the summer and into the fall as they prepare for next season. So that's what always creates a good roster for Rick Barnes, is that he gets these guys that have good attitudes, that are competitors, and they're going to come into practice and they're going to create and mold this team as we progress in the fall. Excited to watch it happen.
Yeah, I love that the motor is Zakai Ziegler. He will be back. I like J.P. Estrella. I think he'll have to play some secondary minutes early on, just because there's a lot of game time minutes that these transfers are going to they have had maybe ahead of him, and we'll see how that battle shakes out. But excited about Tennessee basketball, so wanted to mention that. It's always fun to look ahead. Again, as you listened to us last week, we're in everything school, so you might as well keep up with it all at the same time. The next thing, the Lady Vol softball. Lady Vol softball did host a super regional this past weekend. The University of Alabama in town. Take care of business game one, and really just needed to win one of the last two to punch their ticket to Oklahoma City in the Women's College World Series. And Ben, I don't know what you call Saturday. I know you were in attendance. So you got a doubleheader, and it only counted as one win or loss, and a 14-inning affair that ultimately went the way of the Crimson Tide. Ben, what happened? Just really I don't want to feel negative, because when you're hosting a super regional, you've had a good season, but it was a collapse. I don't think there's another word we could use for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was an error made in the first inning of game two by Gibson at third base that essentially would result in a run. So that was the first run of the ball game, and put us in a bad position moving forward. And that run, that sole error made by Gibson in the first inning, was the difference in the ball game. It was 2-2 at the end of regulation, prior to going into extra innings. So that one run and that error made by Gibson, we can recover from. And overall, during the weekend, we couldn't hit the softball. This wasn't an offensive powerhouse. Patrick Murphy was very clear about that going into the tournament. He was going to beat you with speed. He was going to play small ball. Had a better leadoff person in White at the top of the order compared to Kiki Malloy. Kiki Malloy was just did not show up this weekend, as she has shown up all season long. But you had the error on the Saturday game. You had the error made by the third baseman. And even with that happening, we had a hit batsman 2 innings later on Koitsoyanopoulos that went to Pittsburgh for review, and they basically said it hit the knob of her bat. There was clear contact. Any Tennessee fan would see that the ball hit the forearm and then bounced up. But we didn't get the call there, and that could have been a run as well. So you're talking a difference of maybe 3-1, whatever it may be. But when you get to this kind of competition where you have such a close game, and we just didn't have the hits, it ended up costing us.
So Ben, would I be out of line in saying that we didn't lose in the field, we lost at the plate?
Oh, absolutely. That was.
Is it fair to say a host team in a super regional 3-run shouldn't beat you?
Oh yeah. I mean,
especially
absolutely.
when it takes 14 innings to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There was so many times in Tennessee baseball. Honestly, I don't want anybody to think that I'm not as critical on the baseball team as I am the softball team, because Lord knows Ben works with me on a daily basis. I'm critical on everybody, but here's the dynamic. They left a ton of runs standing on first and second base.
Yeah, 18.
They had a ton of swing and misses. They had a lot of pop-ups. They just had uncharacteristic tentativeness, if that's a word, at the plate. It's almost like they were waiting on this just hand delivered, in the middle of the mall, like Christmas time, wrapped real pretty present to get them to Oklahoma City. When honestly, what is it? I always say it's that old Jason Kelsey or whatever his offensive line coach, Jeff Stetlin, hungry dogs run faster. And so Alabama had no purpose other than to upset Tennessee. If they lost in the Super Regional, well, they had a crap season. They had their worst record ever. They'd had their first losing season ever. So if they'd have squashed out in the Supers, man, this really bad team made a nice run. It's fine. Tennessee goes on to Oklahoma City. But they came up here, hungry dog, running faster, and they said, you know what? We don't care that there's a Lady Vols logo in the outfield. We don't care that it says Sherry Parker Lee Stadium back here. All these College World Series appearances, all these regular season championships. We don't care that you came to Tuscaloosa and took care of business. We're going to show up in your house and do what we need to do. And ultimately, Ben, we talked about it at work. At about the 11th inning, maybe the 10th, I looked at Laura and I said, if we don't win tonight, we're losing this thing. Because we not only – and we talk about it all the time in baseball, even Major League Baseball, because you're an Orioles fan, I'm a Braves fan. Sometimes you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater in the pitching category. And I thought Karen was doing – she was doing a lot of things that made Saturday the have-to-win game because we weren't going to have anything left for Sunday. And so to me, about the 10th, 11th inning, I'm like, this is do or die time. Sunday was a consolation at that point. Once we didn't win Saturday, I thought, honestly, they may run rule us on Sunday just because they had all that momentum.
Yeah, and, I feel like it was a good game. So hats off to Alabama because their plan to pitch against this offense, they knew Tennessee was going to be aggressive at the plate. So Caleb Beaver and Jocelyn Brisky attacked the lower half of the strike zone, and you've got aggressive hitters up there just grounding the ball back to the pitcher, grounding the ball to third base, easy ground outs. We couldn't get the ball out of the infield, for one. But to your point, Wayne, after Saturday, on Sunday, Karen Weekly made a couple of adjustments. Number one, she made a decision to stack the top of the lineup with her seniors. Her logic was, this is the last game of your career, and I want you to understand that. Yeah. Well, she said, this could potentially be the last game of your career, and I want you to understand that your back's against the wall. Anybody in baseball or softball would question that logic. Laura Mueller, all week long, was the hottest hitter. She was the only person hitting the softball, and you would argue that, okay, Kiki Malloy, you're not getting on base. Mueller is a guaranteed on-the-base player, if not a home run hitter. So let's put her at top of the order. So there was no logic to the lineup going into Sunday, number one. And then number two, she made some huge positional changes. She put Zeta Pooney at third base. Now Gibson made a couple errors at third, but she moves Gibson to first base. Gibson doesn't play a lot of first base. And then takes Kutsoyanopoulos and puts her behind the plate at catcher. So making some big changes going into game three that, a lot of fans kind of questioned. And we just sat back and watched the young freshman Brisky beat us.
Yeah, it was here's the thing. It's kind of that glutton for punishment. Like I said, I felt like if we didn't get the win Saturday, Sunday was a formality at that point, but I watched it. I watched the wheels come completely off. I watched the kind of upset look there. It's hard to ever say that it was a bad season when you make it to the Supers. But I think there's some reflection to come out of this. I think as a fan base and as the powers that be, which we're not, I think you got to look at it and just understand, where's our mindset at? Is our mind, because you say this could potentially be your last. I don't know. I guess I want somebody that doesn't even think about losing. I just want somebody that's like, no, No, we're at home. We're at home. We've already won one game here. We know we can do it. They wasted just as much pitching as we did last night. Let's go get a win today, and let's put together something that makes sense. Ben, I'm not a coach, and you can ask my boys. There's a lot of reasons why I'm not. But I could have stacked a better lineup than that. That don't make a lot of sense to me. Now, granted, if all your seniors are studs, that works. I'm not going to put any names out there on who are not studs, but that is not an accurate statement. All the seniors are not studs. So anyway, but spilt milk at this point. Alabama does punch their ticket. They're going to Oklahoma City. They are in the Women's College World Series, and the Lady Vols season has come to a close. Regular season champs, which is very much something to be proud of, something to be happy for. It's just unfortunately, there's going to be a rough taste in the mouth. And I think it's who you lose to, right? You lose to Alabama. Not to say that next year, the way the conference has been realigned, the only thing we could lose to at this point is Monica Abbott and Team USA. But it's you gotta chew on this one for a couple of weeks, and kind of it's what is it? I can't remember. Somebody told me one time you chew it up, you spit out the bad, and you hold on to what's good. And after a couple of weeks, it'll taste a lot better about how this season's kind of transpired. Regular season champs hosted a super and ultimately was one game away from the College World Series.
Yeah, and to your point, Wayne, that game 2 was the determining factor. Game 3, I felt the same as you. Going into game 3, I felt like, Carolyn Pickens, she pitched 9 1/3, 10 strikeouts, 1 earned run. And Kayla Beaver went 10 innings, only 6 hits, no runs, no earned runs. We finally got the Brisky. If we couldn't capitalize on the freshman pitching, then we would go into day 2. They'd have the upper hand, and they sure did. We continued to have quiet bats, so that hurt us. But, moving forward, we got to look forward to next season, and we'll see what Karen puts together for next year.
Sure enough. Last thing before we dive into Tennessee baseball, next weekend is the Legends of Tennessee football camp. This weekend, they're actually putting on a camp in Lynchburg, Tennessee, but they're putting on a fundraising event that we'll be a little bit a part of, as it will host the Q&A section of this event. It is called the Legends on the Hill. If you're looking at it, it's right there. It is tomorrow or Friday night, May 31st, 6 to 9 p.m. I think last I heard was yesterday there was less than 25 tickets available for this thing. So if you're interested, it's just a short, maybe 2.5 hour drive. There's going to be some silent auction stuff. There's going to be a band there. There's going to be, of course, a lot of former Vols. We're going to set up the Q&A. We're going to have a little Ask a Legend set up. Where some of the interaction from the crowd can make its way onto the stage. But yeah, obviously something that we're very excited about, and again, honored to be kind of picked by the Legends of Tennessee camp to help with that. Again, glad we can do it, and excited about Friday night.
Yeah, I can't wait till that stream comes up, Wayne, to hear some of the experiences those football players have had at the University of Tennessee. Excited for that opportunity, that partnership. So look forward to the post.
Yeah, maybe it'll be not a one and done type situation. We'll just have to see if if I fit the bill. We'll just see how that goes. But excited for the opportunity nonetheless. But let's dive into the meat of tonight's podcast, and it's ultimately Tennessee baseball. Tennessee baseball went to Hoover, Alabama, and made me put my foot clean off in my mouth. I thought it was going to be a cup of tea. Don't unzip the duffel bag because we ain't staying here. And Tony Vitello, first game, I thought I was dead on. I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, we don't throw anybody. We start a closer. And I'm like, okay, I can see what you're doing here. You're seeing how long you can get Snead. Can you push him a little bit, maybe 3-4 innings? You couldn't. I can tell you. But you put other guys in. You put Binky in a situation to where he has to do some things. But then ultimately you drop game 1, go into the loser's bracket. I'm like, okay, double elimination. Second game's Texas A&M. They're a top 4 seed. So I'm like, really doesn't make you look bad if you drop that one. If you double out and you go on back to Knoxville getting ready for a host, honestly, I would be just as pumped about the weekend as I am right now. Honestly, no doubt about it. But in very much TV Tony, whatever you want to call him, aggressive nature, I just don't think he likes losing a whole lot. And so he drops that first game, and then he comes out against A&M, takes care of business. And then it's like, okay, then you got to play Mississippi State. I don't know if I want to lose to Mississippi State, but if you play them again, if you beat them, you got to play Vandy. And I don't know that I want to play Vandy two times. And so, he went on a run that you can go back and look at the clips. You can do all the different things. But long story short, we headed back to Hoover, one more seat taken up than when we went, and that seat had the SEC tournament championship in the passenger seat. So been great weekend, really good baseball, really good pressure situations for this team. I think honestly that's the benefit of playing in the SEC. It was very much because you were playing. Really, if you look at the way the seeding went, you were playing in a tournament with the number 1, number 2, number 4, number 5, number 7. I can't remember. I think it was 6 of the top 8 or something national seeds came out of that SEC tournament. And so to me, it was a College World Series in Hoover, Alabama. And Tennessee goes to the losers bracket, claws their way out, gets in that semifinal matchup, gets to play the Vandy again. Takes care of business, and then plays. What do you get when you beat Vandy? You get to play the defending national champs, LSU Tigers, in the championship matchup Sunday at Hoover, at the Hoover Met. It's a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, and what a game that was. Tennessee winning 4-3 against LSU. But overall, and we talked a little bit about it last week in our podcast, in the history of Tennessee baseball and in the history of the Southeastern Conference, you look at what Tony Vitello has accomplished, going 4-1 this week and now 11-5 overall in SEC tournament play under Coach Vitello, making the championship, three championship game appearances in the last 4 years. This is a guy that has really learned to develop his players, put together a competitive team. And he's not looking at just this season. He's looking down the road at the University of Tennessee. But I felt like during the tournament, one key stat for me was the stadium dimensions. You guys know I talk about stadium dimensions, but at Hoover Met, that stadium's 340 down the lines, 385 in the gaps, and 405 dead center field. The most optimistic thing that I looked at and I said, man, this is pretty promising. We played in a stadium that's very similar to Omaha, from a dimensions perspective. We had 6 home runs to our opponent's 9 during the SEC tournament. So we got out homered. And we've been out homered before at Omaha, and we just couldn't find a way to win. And when you look at Blake Burke, who was named the tournament MVP, he was finding a way to manufacture runs without hitting the long ball. Now, he hit some towering bombs. Billy Amick hit some home runs or hit a home run. But overall, we didn't rely on the long ball. So the story of this tournament, pitching was the headline, not the homers in Hoover. Dylan Loy pitched very well. Kirby Cannell pitched well. Zender Seacrest, A.J. Cowsey. These guys pitched really well, and that's very promising going in to NCAA tournament play.
Yeah, to me, Loy's probably the story of the weekend. You know, I know it's not the flashy pick, it's not everything like that, but his ability to put some length in there in the mid part of that game that he came in, I think it really allowed us to flex a little bit late in that baseball game and kind of do some things. I thought Kavarius Tears had a good game against A&M. He and Christian Moore both had 3 hits in that very game, beating the Aggies 7-4. Really thought that was a good game for the team, and very much based on what you said, Ben. Not necessarily a lot going out of here. Kavarius Tears jacks one, and Cal Stark blind squirrel finds a nut every now and again. Cal Stark yanks his first home run of the season, if I'm not mistaken, knocking that one out against Texas A&M. I thought that was the coffin that nailed Texas A&M out of this thing and really kind of set fire to Tennessee moving forward.
Yeah, Kavaris Tears, to your point, Wayne, I'm glad you brought him up. He had 22 at-bats, and in those 22 at-bats, 1 home run, 5 RBIs, 11 total bases, and 1 double. So he's not hitting the doubles. He's not hitting the triples. He's not hitting the home runs as much during the tournament. He's flipping the wrists and getting those singles and finding a way to manufacture those runs. So I think as a Tennessee fan, that was really promising that we didn't have to have the long ball. We were able to have guys like Blake Burke who in 17 at-bats, 1 home run, and still bat .529 during the tournament. I mean, that's incredible for Blake to find ways to get on base, not have to have that home run, get those RBIs in, and beat the opponents.
Yeah, I thought the game that Blake Burke, ultimately I think he's going to be talked about for how he played in the championship game or how he played against Vandy, different things like that. I thought his time to shine was in the Mississippi State game. That was a dogfight, no pun intended, playing the Bulldogs. Tennessee steady against the Bulldogs. Mississippi State, their 5 runs came in 1 inning. They had one kind of smashy inning where I'm like, oh no, here it comes. And again, I wish I had more confidence. I really do. But Blake Burke 3 for 3. And I thought that was a really good situation there. Didn't get walked. Jack, the what proved to be the difference maker in the eighth inning, a solo home run, made it 6-5, and then I chewed my fingernails off as we finished that one off. But Ben, I thought that was a gritty moment for this team. And here's the thing. This team on paper 1 through 9 is not as powerful as 2 years ago team. But what they proved in Hoover for me, especially against Mississippi State, and we're going to get to Vandy and we're going to get to LSU here in a second, they proved that they were gritty and could get a hit when they needed it. You remember Gilbert and Burke, or not Burke. What was his name? He's playing for the Rockies right now.
I can see his
Mike
face.
Honcho.
Beck.
Jordan Beck. But anyway, when you had Mike Honcho, you had Jordan Beck, you had Gilbert, you had Lipsius, you had all these guys. You could literally say, I need a hit, and it would happen. I need a home run. It would happen. And this team doesn't have that, or at least hadn't proved that in the regular season. There were several moments where it's 2 on, no outs, and somehow we would strike out, ground into a double play, game over. They had some of that. Blake Burke had no reason hitting that eighth inning home run other than he knew it had to happen. They put one in place, and he just put it in the parking lot. And so to me, I like that gritty performance against Mississippi State. Great game against Vandy. Always good to beat Tim Corbin. Really good to beat a defending national champion 2 days later. But there was something special about the way we fought and battled and was consistent. Like I said, our 6 runs came across 5 innings. So it wasn't like we exploded, because Tennessee has the tendency to have some 3-run jacks, to have some big innings. But that proved to me that in a game to where it's you got to get in where you can fit in, Tennessee knew how to do that against Mississippi State. I enjoyed that game.
So add some flavor to those grits, Wayne. Let's go with that. Earlier off air, you talked a little bit about SEMO and how he reacted to the Mississippi State players and coaches coming out of the dugout. And I want you to share with the viewers some grind on grit that SEMO, some mannerisms that SEMO did. Go ahead.
So I've got to flip this back and get my microphone down here because it was hilarious. I wish I had my sunglasses. We didn't plan for this, but I do think it was worth that because ultimately we didn't know what they were saying during that game. When they were talking junk, Tony Vitello went out there. He was going to make a pitching change, and he just goes, and he looks at the sideline, and he even says post-game, you need to listen to some of that because he is fiery Italian if I've ever seen that. But anyway, SEMO's He's in there, because the whole infield's in there, and he's just like, and he looks over and he goes, like, did he just say what I think he said? And I guess they maybe made a motion to him, and he just went, oh, and he turns tail, and his glove, he just lets it go. The glove hits the ground. He's got the sunglasses on top of his hat, and he goes and just flips that hat off, and it goes back and lays down. And then the next thing you know, Tony Vitello's having to walk over there, and there's different people telling Simo, maybe this isn't the best time. Maybe this isn't the best time. And to me, poking the bear, you can use all the analogies. I have a ton of them. But to me, that was a moment when Mississippi State poked the bear a little bit. And Blake Burke said, you know what? And this has been in print media, so it's not what I think. It's what's been said. A good old California redneck said, I'll put one in the parking lot. We'll end this thing tonight. And so to me, Blake Burke, he just took it into his own hands and was pretty successful with it. But, yeah, Simo just went boom, and that thing just flew off. And I'm like, and I'm not a logistical fighting savant. Like, I wouldn't say that I'm good at fighting. But I think I'd have left this fella on. Just, every now and again, they just hit the bill and just go on with it. But no, Simo was like, boom, game over. But anyway, fast forward to Saturday's matchup with Vanderbilt. It was weird. My weekend progressed like this. Lost to Vandy. I was like, ugh. Especially the way we lost. Kind of got runned out of there. I don't think that's the way I should have said that. Ran out of that place. It was in Alabama, so maybe they can run to places too. But anyway, lose to Vandy. Man, that sucks. So then you play Texas A&M. You get the win. You're like, okay, you beat a top 4 seed. So I think that washed things out. You go to play Mississippi State. Hope for the best, but if you lose, get ready for the regional. Everything's good, honestly. And you get that win. Now it's play. Then the script completely flipped. I'm like, okay, can't lose to Vandy twice in the same week. Can't do that. It would even the series over the course of 2024. I didn't need any Vandy fans to have that level of clout or that level of flavor in their grits, has been said just a minute ago. But so I went quickly to ain't gonna do it mode. Gotta move on from there. And so I think I was like, okay, how do we do this? How do you do this? And ultimately, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't the most beautiful way to do this thing, but very similar to the Mississippi State game. Intra-mile winning's winning. Tennessee beats Vandy 6-4 to advance to the championship round. That day, Christian Moore, he went 3 for 5. I thought he was very consistent. Ultimately, we'll talk about the championship and who got the MVP of the tournament. Not disputing that at all, but Simo continued to be his ever-consistent self. Blake Burke was 1 for 3, just didn't have a ton of opportunities. Dylan Dreiling, he was a little quiet there. Kavarius Tears 2 for 5. Really not our best hitting performance, I would say, of the tournament. But ultimately, when it mattered, we did what it took, had a 2-run inning, a 3-run inning, and then had our last run in the 8th inning to get our 6 runs. And then Vandy kind of tailed back there at the end. They had 2 runs in the 5th, 1 in the 8th, and 1 in the 9th, just to make me sweat there at the end. But I thought in key moments, we were able to seize some of the momentum that Tim Corbin had generated, and ultimately just keep doubting the Commodores, and then finally shut the door there at the 9th inning.
Yeah, and Tim Corbin, when in his post game, he talked a lot about 1 and 2, and talking about facing Simo and facing Blake Burke, and he complimented the fact that Simo is a major leaguer, and we've talked before about his offense puts him up there in draft with the upcoming upcoming drafts. But where it hinders him a little bit is he has some inefficiencies at second base. But if you recall, back in 2022, he was an outfielder, and I think that is where he's going to be looked at from a draft perspective. But Simo, Corbin complimented Simo, and his ability to play baseball. And then he said, you know what? Right there at number 2, you've got Will Clark. He compared Will Clark to Blake Burke. And Blake, we talked about him batting above 500 in this tournament, finding ways to get hits. So I thought that was a huge compliment from Tim Corbin.
Yeah, and ultimately Christian Moore hits the homer. I thought Vandy had a few key errors that typically aren't very typical Vandy baseball that allowed us to advance, allowed us to get in scoring position so that fly balls put runs on the board. But ultimately, Simo hits the homer in the top of the 6th. That helps very much. And then I thought Seacrest came in, did what he needed to do some nice things for Tennessee to kind of close that door a little bit.
Yeah, good pitching overall in the back end of that bullpen to win that ball game late in the ball game, because runs started to be manufactured by Vanderbilt in the 8th and 9th inning, able to shut the door with Marcus Phillips.
You know, I thought it was funny. We don't necessarily engage in the social media. I don't know what you want to call it. Banter's the word that a lot of people use, but it's really just garbage anymore because people just uneducatedly push buttons. And it's one of those, I think we'll just say mess around and find out, because I do mark this as eligible for kids. So there's a lot of people on social media. We call them keyboard warriors, different things, but they mess around and find out. And it was like a Vandy guy messaged and said, we were coming. We were going to get back. We were on our way back. And I'm like, guys, it was a 9-inning game. Like, it's not like a doubleheader that we played 7. Like, how much longer you need? That's like saying I could have won the Daytona 500, but I never made it to Florida. Well, you know, losing's losing, right? If an inch or a mile, winning's winning. Well, inch or a mile, losing's losing. Tim Corbin, he was pretty fired up a couple times in that, but I will say in a defeat, he handled it well, giving us credit for Simo, Burke, and then ultimately talking nice about most of that lineup. But it's going to take a long time for me to respect him after the stickers on bats situation. But anyway, defeating Vandy did punch our ticket to Sunday for the SEC Tournament Championship. LSU was who we would play in said game, defending national champs, as we talked about. Ultimately, Ben, Laura and I talked about it. We're like, hey, you know, we've made it to the championship. So whatever happens, it's house money now. I'm like, no. We're here. We need to win this thing. If we've got to burn gas, like if we're going to be there and we're going to exhaust pitching and we're going to waste this and we're going to spend the gas, like, because that's been our whole storyline, right? Is how important is the SEC tournament in regards to an Omaha trip and a national championship run. So to me, we've messed around, won some baseball games, and we're in Sunday's championship game. Well, don't go there and then walk home empty-handed. Worst thing that could have happened at that point, once the worm had turned, if you will, we got to win this thing. We got to kind of put that out there. And at that point, beating Vandy, beating Texas A&M, a number 1 national seed was in play. A lot of people said no matter whether we won or lost on Sunday, that was likely to happen. But I think it added fuel to the fire. It looked good. The resume jacked up. Coming into the SEC tournament, I think our RPI was like 5. Leaving the tournament, it was 1 because we had played some pretty tough opponents through that weekend. So ultimately, thought that was a chess match. Honestly, I think it was the first time we had really matched up a whole lot, especially in a win or go home situation with Johnson from LSU since he came to Lindsey Nelson Stadium and sent us home when he was with Notre Dame. Did you make that connection on Sunday?
I did. Yeah. Well, no, not until you just said it. I'm making the connection now.
But I saw a lot of. He righted a lot of wrongs in my book. I thought Tony did a nice job on Sunday, maybe more so than the rest of the weekend, on keeping the leash short. I know you talk about that often, just about knowing when to pull pitchers, knowing when to make changes, knowing when somebody's not got their stuff. And I thought, even though both teams were pretty limited on what their bullpens had left given the weekend, I thought Tony did a good job sending Frank out there to talk to some guys, especially in key moments when you're talking about, what was his name, Tommy Tanks. That he's going to be a super player at the next level, as well as their little their guy that punched their ticket to the championship game, the one that Blake Burke picked off there at first base.
Yeah, and I think the way Tony Vitello managed the pitching staff in the Vanderbilt game, going with Seacrest and Phillips, and then managing the pitching staff in the game against LSU, A.J. Russell came out to start that ball game. And what I was really looking for after the Notre Dame experience from the previous year and some of the pitching decisions in the College World Series last season was, are we going to come out and really kind of just show them that, our Viper in that I use the word Viper, but our Viper, our pit snake out of the bullpen or sitting over there, our golden arm, we're going to pitch him. And we're going to show you that we're not afraid of injury. We're out here to win. And I think the A.J. Russell move kind of put that into LSU's dugout. And, Tommy White and company are sitting there going, wow, they're really going to pitch A.J. Russell, a guy that has been unhittable his freshman year, and going into this season, he's dealt with some injuries, but recently he's been a guy that we didn't expect to see because he's recovering from that injury. They're probably going to save him for the NCAA tournament. They didn't. And he went with the freshman after one inning. Dylan Lloyd comes in. He has an exceptional ball game. 4.2 innings pitched, no runs, no earned, 5 strikeouts. What a great outing for the freshman. And Benke pitched well, but that back end of that bullpen, that's what I look to see as we go into the NCAA regional is Kirby Cannell and Aaron Combs are kind of your two guys that you're going to use throughout the tournament when you get into a pickle. And Cannell and Combs, yeah, they gave up a couple runs there, but overall they were effective. 4 strikeouts for both of them and 2 2/3 innings pitched. So I liked how he managed the pitching staff. And like you said, part of this is Tony Vitello maturing as a head coach. He'd be the first one to say it. I mean, Tony Vitello is a very humble guy, and that's what I really like about him is he talks about lessons that he's learned. He did that in his post-game press conference from the Mississippi State game, explaining kind of his background and how he reacted to that situation with the Mississippi State coach. So I think he's a very humble coach. I think he's learning from his experiences. And look, like we said at the beginning of this broadcast, what he's achieved in the last five years is incredible. So it's tough to criticize a guy that has accomplished as much as he has.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Is he a finished product? Is he a polished unit? No. I think he's learned on the job in some of these key moments, just because he was an assistant for a very short time. We took a chance on him, and absolutely maybe the best thing Dave Hart ever did at Tennessee. I'm pretty sure. No, he was hired by who was the guy that got fired trying to hire a football coach? John Curry. Curry. John Curry. So maybe the best thing and really the only thing John Curry did while he was athletic director here. So, but here's the thing. It came down to it. I must be the word of the day, grit. Aaron Combs, what he was able to do, he came in, and Berkey and those guys were talking about, typically his velocity is here, and we were well down. He did not have the juice that he had against Vandy when he came in and in other spots. But here's the thing. He didn't blink. He didn't worry about it. He worked on his position, worked on his placement, and ultimately had that guy. And it's really bad because the catcher there, who was the last out for LSU, he had really struggled for the tournament. I think if I'm not mistaken, he was one that let one get by him, and we scored a run, and then he's the final strikeout. So he has not had the best of Sundays. But give a little shout out to Cal Stark, the pick play there at first base. there's all kinds of moments in high school sports and in college sports, even in pro sports, where you if you're my age, you go dun 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 dun. But it was freaky cool because Cal Stark, it wasn't even like a pickoff pitch. It wasn't even one that had him set up. He was on his knees, and there was some signal between he and Blake Burke. Rightfully so, post game, they didn't share what that signal was. But there was something that said, I can't remember that runner's name, but it was he had blonde bleached hair. I can't remember his name.
Milam? Was it Milam?
Maybe. But he was the one that jacked the home run that got him into the championship game. But they had noticed that he had been creeping closer and closer to second base, had a huge lead. Mm-hmm. And even Blake Burke was kind of playing that back toward the grass there. And there was a signal, and the pitch was kind of a little outside, and Stark just rocketed that thing to first base. Burke wasn't there yet. Had Burke not cut exactly at the time he did, that thing's rolling down the baseline, and Kavarius Tears is the next one to go see it. And so to me, that level of consciousness to know there's a situation going on at the plate, but also know you're a little bit farther over than normal. Let's take advantage of that, because that out proved to be huge because LSU had base runners. And so that would have been, had the guy gotten a hit, had there been another at-bat opportunity, and if I'm not mistaken, we may have been in trouble at the plate because that got us out of the inning. If I'm not mistaken, we might have been down like 3-1. It got us out of the inning. And so to me, those moments, taking advantage of those moments, executing in those moments, that's what made this weekend cool. Ultimately, we played all the 5 games. We exhausted all the pitching. We go into this regional tournament 4 or 5 games behind where we would have been had we bounced early. But at the end of the day, it's not what you should have done, could have done, might have done. It's what you did do. And now you've got to look down you've got to host a regional tournament with an opportunity, win this thing, and you'll host a super with a chance to get to Omaha. So as the podcast is titled, we have a path to get back to Omaha.
Yeah, and just to your point about the catching position, Cannon Peebles at the beginning of the season, let's remember where we were. At the beginning of the season, Cannon Peebles was picked up from NC State. It was intended that Cannon Peebles was going to come in and take the job from Cal Stark because Cal Stark just didn't have the year defensively or offensively that Tony Vitello thought would fill that lineup position. And guess what? Cal Stark has stepped up. He's showing the hard work that he has put in, and he's playing an exceptional defensive catcher. He is showing that he can hit for power. And to your point on that play, and I always tell people, because I have played before at the catching position and had some really good coaches, but that catching position, it is the only position on the field where you play the entire game in foul territory, okay? So you're in foul ground. You're not in fair ground, and you are a coach of the infield. You have to have a wherewithal to see that down the first base line. It's not Blake Burke hollering to home plate saying, hey, he's taking a big lead. You have to observe the runner at first. You have to observe the third base coach signals to the first base runner, how the manager is communicating to the third base coach to give signals, things of that nature. And just really impressed with how Cal Stark's playing that position. We talked last week about, I just think it was absolutely crazy that he walked through the strike zone during a live pitch because he saw the steal coming at home. That's insane. That's Top Gun, Tom. That's Maverick, Deuce. Crazy, buddy.
Well, and you know, it's like I said, it's executing in those tight moments that makes it special. You know, it could have been very much a blooper reel. You know, if he steps in the in that live pitch situation, guy turns on it. You know, there could have been a lot of things that went wrong, but it ultimately went right for the Vols, and they have now an opportunity, like I said, to host a regional, the Knoxville Regional. Does that not? I mean, that's got a nice ring to it. I think it sounds really good, and they'll
the regional,
the regional, but they are paired against, obviously Tennessee's the 1 seed in the Knoxville Regional. The 2 seed is the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. You'll remember those because they actually hosted last year when we went to Hattiesburg and took care of business down there. Indiana, the Hoosiers, not the basketball school, but the baseball team. And then Northern Kentucky. And so pretty broad, kind of difference here. A lot of people say Southern Miss, 41-18 on the season, had an opportunity that they should have been one of those host sites. Didn't happen, so they're coming to Knoxville. A lot of people chirping on social media from the Southern Miss side saying revenge tour, opportunity to come to Knoxville, get one back. I think Tony Vitello's done this in quiet in his little quick comments here leading up to this weekend. They're worried about Northern Kentucky. They're not worried about Southern Miss.
Right, and you've got a couple of guys that are coming back like Nico Mazza and Monastery from Southern Miss that were part of that team, but they're really not the big-name players that they were from the previous year. Yeah, they're still going to use Nico Mazza. Nico Mazza's somewhere trending above 4 and, in earned run average. And Monastery is still batting low part of the lineup, 249 hitter. They're not the team that they were last season. They got a good hitter in Dalton McIntyre. That's a guy batting 389, top of the lineup. He's got a couple home runs, but he really comes through with speed. But overall, in this region, we've got to, and Tony Vitello will be the first one to tell you, we got to look at this Northern Kentucky team. This team, the Norse. And I don't even know what a Norse is. Is it a horse from the north, or is it like if you're a horse from the south, are you a source, and a horse from the north, you're a Norse, or how does that work?
Oh, I'm trying to think of an animal you could merge with a horse, and it's a Norse, of course. A Norse mythology. Norse, Nordic, or Scandinavian mythology is the body of myths belonging to the North Germanic people stemming from Old Norse religion and continuing and ... So maybe it's the 12 Norse gods. Maybe that's where they're stemming this from. I don't know.
Yeah, I think when I look
taken, I don't get it.
Yeah, when I looked at their team, of course, they, in order to make this tournament and you're a low seed like that, you're a 4th ranked seed coming into a regional like this, you have to have won your conference. And basically that's what happened here. They won the Horizon League championship for the first time in program history. This is a team that can hit the long ball. They got 86 home runs on the year. Now, granted, they're facing a team that's hit almost double that. And they've got a guy, Liam McFadden-Ackman, 362 average. Watch him, 21 home runs, 729 slugging. They've got a really good leadoff guy, Wayne, Trayvon Moss. He was the MVP of the tournament, and he's a senior outfielder. He's got 29 stolen bases in 32 attempts, batting 388. So a lot of speed at the top of the order. Their goal is to get him on base and have McFadden, Ackman, and company just knock those runners in.
Well, and it looks like, Tennessee's leading the country in home runs, 147 on the season. You can put basically any combination of 2 of the other ones together, and they're barely going to be there. But it is in Lindsey Nelson, 86 by Northern Kentucky home runs. Not sure how big a ballparks they've been playing in, but that's a pretty good season. 147 is unconscious, what we've done this season. So, yeah, look at Northern Kentucky. I think we've got to play very well there, and then ultimately see where the chips fall between Indiana and Southern Miss. There's a lot of people that say it's Tennessee and Southern Miss, and I think if you look at RPI, you look at record, you look at a lot of different strength of schedule, all those things, yeah, that's where it plays, or at least that's what it looks like. But I don't think anybody can sleep. And at this level, everybody's a good baseball team. You got to win the first game in front of you.
Yeah, and my big question going into this regional is what is going to be the rotation that Tony Vitello puts out there? Because The concern over the SEC tournament was Drew Beam had those 5 earned runs in 4 2/3. Nate Snead, you talked about it in the Vanderbilt game. He struggled against Vandy in 3 1/3, gave up 5 earned runs. So you have to think that he wasn't too confident about, Snead or Beam, and you've got to win that first ball game. Now, he was confident with Loy. He was confident with A.J. Russell. Stamos and Cowsey are guys that can kind of play that day one, that Friday night start. We talked about the freshman Dylan Loy. So I'll be real interested how he plays, how he puts out that pitching rotation going into the weekend, because obviously if you win the first game, you're looking at what are you going to do when you face that Southern Mississippi team. Ideally, at some point, you're going to face them this weekend.
Yeah, if I've and I'm, Lord knows I've been wrong more times than I've been right, but Tony Vitello seems to be use the plan that's worked for you to get you here. They've got 50 wins on the season. To me, this is going to be no different than any other Friday, Saturday, and Sunday schedule. I see Cowsey, I see Stamos on Friday, probably Locks, Horn, Southern Miss, and Tennessee with Beam on the mound. We'll just have to see if it's good Beam or bad Beam, and then like I said, we'll finish out the way we do. But I don't think he changes much, Ben. I just don't see that. I think he may keep a short leash on him. I think you would appreciate a short leash if people start getting loose, but. I think they understand how important this first game is, and then they'll move on from there.
Right, I agree. I think, and Vitello talked a little bit about that. He talked about his pitching decisions throughout the SEC tournament, and he stuck to the game plan and basically said this was kind of our rotation going into the tournament, and we didn't steer from the rotation. We stuck with our rotation. We treated it kind of like a midweek game, and we worked our way into the weekend, and we went with Beam and company as we got deeper in the weekend. So I'm like you. I think they'll probably go with Stamos and Cowsey for the first game, kind of see what happens with Beam. But I will be interested. I think, like you, to your point earlier in the show, I think he made some really good decisions and did give short leashes on pitchers like Sechrist and company, because he has the confidence in the back end of that bullpen with Cannell and Combs. And Combs is doing great. I mean, in that SEC tournament, 3 innings and 6 strikeouts. He did give up a couple extra base hits, but overall, one thing that I thought was pretty cool with his mannerisms is, he made those strikeouts. And I think from this point on, moving forward, if I ever just crush something, like the other night I had one of those air fryer hot dogs you told me to try, I think I'll just automatically go up and just start moving those knees and just pumping those knees like pistons.
Those knees.
As right after I crush something, whatever.
It's like a Tennessee walking horse. That's my play.
Yeah. So whenever I crush something, I'm just going to jack those knees up like a piston, and that's what I'm gonna roll with.
Oh, Lightning McQueen himself. But anyway, but Ben, a lot of people's going to ask, why are you not talking about Chase Burns and the opportunity to maybe see them in a super? I'm going to tell you why. Because you got to make it to the super first. And they've got to make it to the super first. Let's put it out there. They're not even a host team. So they're looking up at Eastern Carolina right now. So probably not going to talk about that today. And honestly, we've run out of time. But Ben, it's going to be a good weekend. I hope the weather's a little spotty. I think there's some opportunity for some wetness here in Knoxville. But at the end of the day, Tennessee baseball take care of Northern Kentucky and see where we go from there. And by the way, for future reference, don't ever Google Norse. What does that mean? I feel like now I've got my own satellite, and really, I don't know. I feel like I need to say some things, like, clean some things up.
Well, guys like you and me, where we grew up, Wayne, if they're a horse from the north, they're the Norse. If they're a horse from the south, they're the Source, and from the west, Worse, and then from the east, they're Eeyores. So that's how it is.
I was waiting on the east. I was like, yours.
You don't want to know southwest, southeast, and all the other directions in the compass, buddy. It gets complicated in the type of horse,
I hear you. All relative, though. All relative, though. But one last shout out again, Friday night. You're probably watching this video on a Thursday because we posted it real late Wednesday night. But Friday, the May the 31st, we're going to be in Lynchburg, Tennessee at Jack Daniel's Distillery, the Legends on the Hill event. I'm going to pop it up here one more time. We will be there doing the Q&A session with the former Vols, the current Vols. A list of who will be there is TBD. So, again, I got to be there to see kind of where that's going to be unless you want to catch it on our backswing as we post the results. But ultimately, again, check that out. We're excited to be able to be right there, Jack Daniel's Distillery, this Friday night. Tickets still available as of this broadcast. Can't guarantee that's going to be the case when you watch it, but that QR code there on the screen can get you there. Food's involved. There's going to be a silent auction. It's got some swag, some Tennessee signed things. Of course, again, Tennessee former Vols, current Vols, and a lot of good people there at this event. Appreciate Jack Daniels for hosting and appreciate Legends of Tennessee Football Camp for allowing us to be part of it. And also their camp, Legends of Tennessee Football Camp, the Sevierville 3-day camp. It's called the Friends and Family Weekend, is next weekend. So check that out. Again, Legends of Tennessee Football.org, I believe, or Legends of Tennessee Football Camp.org. You can Google it, get right there. But Coach Jabari Davis, Chris Treese launched that several years ago, and it's kind of blossomed into a great thing for a lot of different current, former players, and then young people in our area find ways to get to that camp. But Ben, a lot to unfold. We did so. Took us a little bit over an hour, but pretty fun nonetheless. Sun's beating in on you right now, buddy.
Yeah, it's catching me, buddy. It's catching. It's a good sign, though. That's good luck.
Oh, is it? Well, the Braves are playing the Nationals. Let's hope it's a little bit more of that Braves magic. So we'll see what happens. But guys, if you enjoyed what you watched, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Wow, that's a word. Like or a subscribe here on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. Like us on Twitter. Yeah, we still call it Twitter here. But give us a like. If you don't like us, we appreciate it. Thanks for listening this one time, and you made it through the whole thing. So you know, could be worse. But if you, I lost all concentration. If you've liked what you've heard, we've got our shows archived. You can check it out on this channel. Go back. This is our 40th episode, so we've talked about a lot of stuff. We've changed the show over the course of the time, so you can see us when we were new, and then you can see us now. So, again, like, subscribe, and you can follow us on socials. But that's all we're going to do today, Ben. Thanks again for checking in. Always good to see you in that Rebel gear. The fall is coming, and we are going to be there for the Rebels in 2024. But until next time, as I always say, take care, be safe, and that's right, grind on.
Grind on.